We are recording.
Good afternoon. It's now 3 o'clock, June 18th, 2020. This is the regular quarterly meeting of the Board of Directors of the Woodland-Davis Clean Water Agency. This meeting is being conducted electronically as permitted by the Governor's executive order, and we'll follow the protocols dictated to us in that order. That means that we are operating remotely and that the public cannot join us in our individual locations, but everybody's more than welcome to join us here electronically. And we welcome any input you wish to make throughout our meeting. Leanne, maybe you can review the ways that people can communicate with us during this meeting. Leanne?
Oh, okay. Sure. People can send emails to me at lmelhoff@woodqua.com. If you send an email during this meeting, I will read back emails that are no longer than 2 minutes in length. And then any public comment we do get during the meeting will be posted on our website after the meeting.
There is no close, excuse me.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say at this point, we have not received any public comments about any of the items or any comments about the agenda.
Thank you, Leanne. All right, moving on then to our to the other items on our agenda. We usually begin with a roll call. Why don't you proceed with that, Leanne?
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to call the roll for the Board of Directors. Chair Tom Stallard.
Here.
Okay. Vice Chair Will Arnold.
I'm here.
Good. Director Brett Lee.
Here.
All right. And Director Rich Landsberg.
I'm here.
Good. And Director Don Saylor.
Here.
Good. And then UC Davis Representative Camille Kirk.
Here.
Great. All right. Everybody's in attendance.
Thank you, Leanne, and thank you everyone for coming today. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Are there any items that anyone wishes to add or drop from our agenda today?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. This is Lee.
Landsberg will second it.
Motion by Lee, second by Landsberg to approve the agenda. Leanne, please call the roll for vote.
Okay. Chair Stallard.
Aye.
Vice Chair Arnold.
Aye.
Okay. Director Lee.
Aye.
Good. Director Landsberg.
Aye.
Good. The passes 4-0.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is public comment. Our clerk has reported no public comment having been received. On our screen right now is her email address. So if you have something you wish to submit to be read during this meeting, please take advantage of that opportunity to do so. There being no further public comment at this time, we'll move on to the regular agency business. Item 1 is our consent item, which consists of 2 items: the approval of our regular meeting minutes of April 16 and our treasurer's quarterly report. Is there any item to be removed from the consent calendar? Presuming none, is there a motion to approve it?
Motion by Landsberg.
Second, Arnold.
Okay, motion by Landsberg, second by Arnold to approve the consent calendar, item 1 on our agenda. All in favor say aye, and excuse me, please call the roll, Leanne.
Oh, okay. Chair Stallard.
Aye.
Good. Director Lee.
Aye.
Good. Vice Chair Arnold.
Aye.
Good. And Director, let's see, did I cover everybody?
One more.
Arnold, Director Lee, Director Landsberg.
Aye.
Good. Passes 4-0.
All right, thank you. That allows us then to proceed to manager's update and operations update. Well, let's start with Tim. You're the head guy, aren't you? So do you have a report?
Yes, we do.
Good afternoon. I'm Tim Bush, General Manager for the agency. There's a couple items on the update for today. A couple work items over at the joint intake facility that we're working on. Update on where we are with our America Water Infrastructure Act Risk and Resiliency Plan and Emergency Response Plan. I'll leave it.
Would you say that 3 times, only faster?
Yeah, the federal government to make really long titles. And then where we are with the risk and alternatives evaluation we've been working on. We do have an update for the board today on that. Kind of an interesting thing over, it's not a stormwater pond, it's one of the agency's drying beds. That's kind of an interesting thing that's happened over a couple of weeks ago there. And then our operations update from Stan. First item at the joint intake, the erosion control improvement project. This is something we've been talking about for some time. We're just about complete designing the erosion repairs. This is where the levee has eroded on the south side of the joint intake facility. There's a bit of an eddy that occurs in the Sacramento River that has eroded the levee rather badly in the past couple of years. So we're working on a project to basically grade it out a bit and then dump some rock to protect it. It's very similar to what we have on the north side of the pump station. For whatever reason, it was not constructed on the south side. The reason why the design is still almost complete is because we have been negotiating with the permitting agencies. It turns out we have to do all of the levee permitting work for this size project, the same as if it were a couple miles long levee project down the river. We need permits from something like 8 different state and federal agencies, and they all want us to do something a little bit different. So we are working through that process. So they've requested a few things to be added to the design that we're working on. We have another meeting next week on what we hope is the last one. The plan is to go to construction this summer or fall. There's a couple different ways we're looking at doing that, and that is an item for the board consideration this afternoon. We would like to get that work completed before November of this year. The flood season by statute starts November 1, so we'd like to get the work completed before then. Next item at the joint intake, there was a meeting I attended on Monday with RD 2035. Both Kyriakis and Michael attended it, and Sierra Northern Railroad. The railroad had requested some time ago, like last year, to be able to park past vehicles on joint intake property for their excursion train, primarily weekends. There's a draft agreement that was prepared last year, has been reviewed by Dick Shanahan and also Scott Morris, RD 2035's attorney. That document's still in draft form. One of the considerations that we had, RD 2035 and the agency, is we wanted to have the property line between the railroad and the agency staked, so we knew exactly where the property boundary is. Mm-hmm. That finally happened last week, and as it turns out, the fence that the railroad has put up and some of their Connex boxes are in fact on agency property. They are encroaching by about 9 feet into our property. It's kind of a temporary fence. It's not a permanent fence. It's something that we can work through with them, but it does complicate a draft agreement for them to park on our property a bit. So we're working through that now with RD 2035 and Sierra Northern Railroad. There's a lot of options on the table. We could work out a deal to potentially sell them that part of the property. It's not a lot of square feet, or we can tell them to get off of our property, or we can let them stay for certain other considerations. So there's really kind of an initial meeting on Monday on how to move forward with that. We'll be getting work through in the next couple of months, I think. The next step, the America Water Infrastructure, I can't say it 3 times. The AWIA, RRA, and ERP. We did complete the risk and resiliency assessment. That was completed and submitted before the March 31 deadline. It's kind of an interesting process that we went through. We kind of look at the agency's facilities, what risks and vulnerabilities do we have, and it's anything from a flood event, a fire, some natural event, anything from intentional terrorism to a disgruntled employee, and what risks do our facility has, and then how do we deal with that? It turns out our facility actually ranked really well. We got a 74% score, which is good for this effort, and it has a lot to do with, I think, that our facilities all being new were designed with a lot of these things in mind. And the cities and the project partners do have backup water supply. So in the event something did happen to the water plant and knocked it offline, the cities and UC Davis are still able to deliver drinking water while the repairs are going So we did pretty well on that evaluation. Currently working on the emergency response plan. We are on track to have that submitted ahead of the September 31 deadline. This type of work is something that the project partners also have to do, but since the agency serves more than 100,000 customers, we have the earlier set of deadlines. The project partners will have to do this, but they have later deadlines. I think it's December 31 of next year, even for the RRA portion of it. It's a bit longer timeline than what we had. This is the interesting environmental thing. So this is the drying bed number 3 for the water treatment plant. As part of treating the water supply, what we do is we take the solids out of the water, and then the clean water goes to the project partners. The water that has more solids, we have to do something with it. So we have these 4 drying beds where the water goes to simply evaporate. And we do have the ability to bring some of it back if we need to. But what happened this year is these ibis birds, they're kind of a shorebird. They're not endangered, but they have decided to make their home in one of our drying beds this year. A little bit hard to tell in the picture, but there are over 5,000 birds living in this 10-acre pond. If you look closely on the gravel near the water line, there are several nests with eggs. Well, really, they just lay eggs right in the gravel, but there are about 5,000 birds in this pond right now. They just kind of showed up one day, and this is now where they're living for the next month or 2. So I thought it was kind of interesting to share with the board.
Can we call it a homeless problem?
Yes, yes.
Let me ask this question. I mean, I'm happy to provide home for the natural world, but do we acquire any kind of long-term liabilities because the birds have adopted this site?
No, I don't think so. They will leave as soon as their younger birds are able to fly. And we know that because they were living in the North Pond, what we call the North Pond, which is between the wastewater treatment plant and the water treatment plant the last 2 summers. And as soon as their young birds are able to fly, they all leave and they're gone. For whatever reason, they did not like that spot. I think it's because the tulies aren't living in that pond this year. They decided to move here instead. They do tend to damage the tulies. They will. I don't think we're supposed to have tulies in that pond anyways. Probably some additional solid materials in our pond is what we'll end up with. But it's quite a bit east of the water plant.
All right. So on to operations. So, as is on your screen, currently around 23 million gallons a day. That's actually a little lower with term 91 coming into effect. But those are the averages. They're still pretty close with Woodland-Davis and UCD. Again, probably a bit lower with the term 91. Certainly all regulatory, contractual drinking obligations are being met, both by us and Jacobs. And also, as normal, water quality and diversion amounts are posted to our website. Mentioned term 91 did start June 5th. That means the agency cannot draw on its primary water right of 45,000 acre feet. So we are using our secondary water rights that we acquired from Conaway. And those, with the last bullet there, Shasta normal year, we did think we were going to have a Shasta critical year, which lowers our summer water rights to 7,500 acre feet. However, they changed their mind here recently and declared a normal year. So we do have access. The agency does have all 10,000 acre feet to use for the 3 partners. So we're currently drawing under that water right, and we anticipate that to be through the end of October. At the joint intake, I believe we've reported on this before. We had some issues with the jib crane not being able to get to our 10th screen on the far south end of the structure. So we've had West Yost looking at that from a structural perspective to see if what we'd need to do to use that crane to get there and be able to pull that last screen. We do believe we have a solution to that. We are still working through a couple technical aspects, but we do believe we will be able to use that crane with some hopefully minor modifications that won't affect the pool. As you can tell from the left and right pictures, obviously we need to get these screens up and cleaned. You've seen those pictures before, certainly with the debris that gets clogged in them and over the year before they're cleaned again. So we're working on that. We do have another solution as well if the crane doesn't come into play. and be able to get that screen. We did find out actually today that we can have divers go in the water and actually clean them in the water. No cost associated with that, but that potentially is another option for us. And then just a couple notes for Woodland. So Jacobs, previous to this year, the facility provided all three partners based on flow desire. So we'd say we'd like 10 million gallons a day, and they would provide that for us. But Woodland had a desire to look to use pressure as a delivery set point. So we did work with Woodland, and the agency worked with Woodland and Jacobs. We did make some modifications to some programming, and they are now able to get deliveries based on pressure in their systems out in the distribution system. That, to my understanding, has been working pretty well. UCD and Davis may follow on in their footsteps once they iron out all the kinks, of course. We may follow on and see if we can maybe do something similar with that. When you do it by pressure, it certainly prevents some back pressure sometimes that we see, especially in Davis, where when some of our deep wells come on, we can actually see some pretty good back pressure on the transmission main that actually will, at times, has actually stopped the pumps at the treatment plant from providing us water for a very short period. So doing it based on pressure may be the long-term solution to that. And then a couple other minor things. We have been investigating, this is a couple year issue, where along where we ran our transmission main down to Davis and UCD, we have seen some seepage from a canal, irrigation canal, right along where we put our pipe. They've experienced some seepage into the field that did not used to exist. So the working assumption is somewhere along our pipeline, we've created an avenue for that seepage to occur. So we're still investigating that. And then we also were notified, and a farmer down on Road 103 further down, that an irrigation pipe that crosses 103, they just notified us that they TV'd that and found that it had been damaged. Again, right above where we put our pipe in. The reason we hadn't known that till now was they hadn't used that pipe in a couple of years. They had used well pumps on each side of the road, and they had a need to use that pipe, found out that they had issues. So we're investigating that and looking for a fix there. Shouldn't be a big effort. But certainly it's pretty obvious that somehow with our pipeline going in, we put the pipe underneath that irrigation line. So it's pretty obvious that we had something to do with that damage. And that's it for the ops report.
Thank you. Any member of the panel or president wish to ask any questions of either of our managers? I'm not hearing anything. Lynn-Ann, anybody call in?
No, I've received no public comments.
All right. Thank you both very much for the good reports. This brings us to item 3, which is the consideration adoption of the fiscal year 2020-2021 final budget. Are you presenting, Tim?
Yes. Yep.
Proceed.
So the budget overview of the budget before you today is very similar to what was presented back in April. I think we've only made a few minor changes in that budget. There's really 2 categories that we have going forward since we completed construction of the facilities. O&M category, which is basically all the costs of treating and delivering water to the partners, and then our SRF loan repayment schedules. So the 2 categories for that. Of our proposed fiscal 21 budget, the bottom line is a $19.26 million budget. Of that, about $8.6 million is O&M cost, the cost of treating and delivering drinking water. I do have some more detailed information in the next following slides. I think there's five main categories: the direct cost of O&M, oversight category, our permits and water supply, typical administration, and then our contingency. And then the largest of the 2 major items is our SRF loan payment schedule. The split is roughly, last year we were pretty much 50-50 between O&M and loan repayment. This year, it's something like 45% O&M and 55% loan repayment is where we are this year. Sorry about that. My other phone is ringing currently. It'll stop. Under the major O&M categories, a couple of the bigger things is the O&M cost itself is about 7.8 million or 7.18 million of the 8.6 total. This is the biggest item of that, or the biggest items really, are the fixed and variable costs associated with operating and treating drinking water. And then the next largest one, we spend about $2.3 million a year on electricity and pass-through chemicals. Of that, the vast majority is the electricity. We do spend quite a bit of money on electricity over there. Permitting fees, water rights fees, various reporting requirements, about $200,000 a year. And then the work over the joint intake is budgeted at about $200,000 this year. O&M oversight category includes service contracts requirements related to the operations, coordination with RD 2035. We do have to split the electricity bill at the water treatment plant. We split the electricity bill between the 3 project partners based on water usage. At the joint intake facility, we have WAPA Power over there, which is a very different type of electricity company. They have several different rates, different times of day. There's chargebacks that come sometimes 2 months later. And we do have to split that bill with RD 2035. So we do actually spend a fair amount of effort every month on working through our various electricity bills and who owes what under which category. One thing new this year under the O&M oversight category is a third-party inspection of the water treatment plant. Believe it or not, we are going to be in our 5th year of operation already in this next fiscal year.
Wow.
And it seems like we just started, but we will be in our 5th year already.
Is it October 1?
June 1 of 2016 is our 5th year. Well, June 1, 2016 is when we started.
Okay.
So
So we're 4 years as of this month.
Yeah. Yeah, so in the contract, we have provisions to do a third-party inspection. Since we do have contract operations, we are very happy with Jacobs or CH and the work they've been doing. And we really have no real concerns there, but we have the opportunity to bring in a third party every 5 years, basically to make sure that everything's being maintained so that it is a durable facility. That at the end of the contract, we have facilities that still work.
Is most of this project operation maintenance money we're paying to the contractor who operates it on the design, build, operate business?
The $4.5 million is all of that is yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's the fixed and variable. We have 2 categories. We have a fixed rate and a variable rate. What we do, we estimate water usage for the year, and there's 4 categories that we pick, and it's by an average daily water use, so many million gallons per day. We pick which category. This year we picked 12 MGD that we will average at least 12 MGD or higher, and then it's a prorated rate. There's no penalties between that and the next higher step, so we just simply pay the difference. So that ends up being on the variable side. Last year I think we ended up at 17.5 or something MGD on average every day, and 17.5 is the next category. So we think this year, because of extended term 91, we may be just under that. So we pick the lower category and we pay the difference.
Thank you.
The other components in our O&M budget are permits and water supply. That's roughly $200,000 a year for various water rights support and reporting we have to do. Supplemental purchasing investigations, that's follow on from the item later on the agenda today. Starting to look into what options do we have if we wanted to augment our water supply. And then completion of the water supply risk and alternatives evaluation. This work started last year. It is close to being done, but there is still some work to be completed in this next fiscal year. Agency administration category, that covers costs for agency management, including Stan and myself and our agency secretary, treasurer accounting services, legal counsel, and property tax legal counsel, which we still have some work to do on that. One thing that went up this year is insurance. We had been paying right around $100,000 per year for insurance for our facilities. This year, that's going up to something like $130,000. There's a rather big increase there. Miscellaneous activities, we're part of various organizations like Northern California Water Agency, Sac River Settlement Contractors Group, and I think 1 or 2 others. And then the one thing that's this year is the Urban Water Management Plan. We have to do that every 5 years. That will happen this next fiscal year. We'll start when DWR gives us the guidelines on how to put it together. There are some changes this year that mainly things that they're adding to the report we've not done previously. The last item is operations contingency. This is 5% of the O&M category only. This is something that we carry forward every year, just in case something were to happen that's outside of what we budgeted. We have some funds to take care of whatever that may be. And the last item under our budget is the SRF debt repayment. These are the same numbers that you saw last year and the year before that. They will stay these amounts through the duration of the loans. It's just basically paying back the loans for the construction of our facilities. Looking at a comparison between this next fiscal year 21 and our current fiscal year, we're looking at a reduction in the total budget by about $1.1 million. Roughly $700,000 of that is under the O&M directly. O&M oversight would have been decreased, but it is a little bit higher because of the third-party inspection. Permits and water supply is reduced a bit, mainly because we're finishing some things that were a one-time item. Agency administration is reduced primarily because of taxes. That was our taxes line item. And operation contingency is a little bit lower because the O&M category itself is a little bit lower.
And these next slides may be redundant because Tim went through all of them.
Yeah, they're a bit redundant because I covered it already. So yeah, so O&M category is a bit lower, partly because we knew term 91 was going to be longer this year. So we did reduce our projected flow or projected demands from the water plant. So that kind of cut that. And then everything else kind of follows through that.
And apologize, Lake Shasta is a normal year now. When we first put this together, it was critical.
Yeah, it just changed. It just changed last week. And then, yeah, so water supply permit budget, the risk that's reduced a bit, mainly because we are nearly complete with the water supply alternatives analysis. It was fully funded last year. We did most of the work last year. We're underspending that category this year and doing some of it this next fiscal year.
To ask a question I've asked in the past, but I can't recall your response. Are we a Yolo County Risk Management Agency insured, or do we have to go outside for insurance?
Yeah, we are covered through YC Permia.
Did they explain why they're increasing essentially by 30%?
Yeah, I saw it in one of their board meetings. It's mainly due, if I recall correctly, to they cover everything directly up to a certain dollar amount, and then everything over that goes to a different, like a reinsurance company, and those costs have gone up substantially.
That's my understanding as well, Tim. Yeah.
Thank you.
We ourselves have not ever had a claim, and hopefully never will. On the
Most people don't. That's how insurance companies make money. But of course, this is the purpose of having a cooperative insurance pool for public agencies in our county.
Yes. Last items, I kind of covered these a little bit already. O&M contingency is going down a little bit, mainly because our O&M costs are going down a little bit. And debt and reserve payments are the same as last year. Well, $972 different than last year because there was a slight change in one of the amortization schedules by $972. So in terms of revenue, you may notice that there's a slight difference between the revenue total and the total authorized budget. Authorized budget request is $9.2 million, or $19.2 million, sorry. Revenue total is $18.85 million. The reason for that is we've actually subtracted out the contingency from the revenue from the partners. We do need a contingency authorized to spend in case we need it. However, historically, we have never actually used the contingency. So what happens is that we collect the money for the contingency from the project partners. We do not spend that money, and then we return it to the partners in Q2 of the following fiscal year. So the thinking this time around is that instead of charging the partners for money that we already have in the bank and then simply giving it back, just simply not charge the partners this time, leave the money in the bank. If we do end up using our contingency, we can simply include it in the budget the following fiscal year, but we also have the ability, if we needed money for some emergency, to go to the project partners directly and request funding if something were to happen.
And I presume that's been approved with both city managers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it actually, and Kim is on the line, she can speak to it. Actually, financially, for the partners, it works. It's beneficial to the partners because they write smaller checks to the agency.
That's okay. We don't need, I think we get it. Thanks, Kim. Anyway, go ahead, proceed.
I think that's the last slide in budget. So any questions on the budget? I have all the detail in front of me if there's any questions, I can speak to any of the items.
Not much change from the report you gave us last time. So anybody on the board have a question? Any
Hi.
inquiry?
Yeah, this is Camille, and I'm curious, have we ever explored putting in some on-site solar to manage our electricity costs?
We looked at it very briefly in the design phase of the plant, and at that time, so that was probably 5 or 6 years ago, is maybe even a little bit longer than that ago. And at that time, the agency was very busy on financing and designing construction. It was kind of put aside at that time. At that time also was kind of considered marginally beneficial. Since that time, of course, cost of solar has gone down, but we just have not picked it up again. It's something we can certainly do.
Seems like it might be worth it, especially if it would help us with reducing operating costs long run, and you know, a PPA may be a way to go.
Yes. Yeah, definitely agreed.
We've got a lot of experience with big solar at UC Davis.
Thanks,
Happy to be
Camille.
a source of info.
Mhm.
Yeah, we can talk about that at one of our managers meetings, and how to get started, and what kind of consultant, if anything, we need to help
Why
us.
don't you agendize that for the next meeting? So tell us what you've done in the meantime, okay?
Yes.
All right. Does that mean we're up to the point of a discussion? Anybody call in, Linan?
No, I've received no public comments on this item.
All right. Any member of the panel wish to ask any questions? Okay. We're ready for a motion.
This is Lee. I'll make a motion to adopt the budget as proposed.
Thank you, Brett.
Landsberg will second it.
Okay, motion by Director Lee, second by Director Landsberg to approve the fiscal year 2021 budget as presented. Further discussion? There being none, all in favor say aye. Oh, got to do the usual. Linan, call the roll, please.
Okay. Chair Stallard,
Aye.
good. Vice Chair Arnold,
Aye.
good. Director Lee,
Aye.
all right. And Director Landsberg.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. That concludes item 3. Item 4 is to consider approval of the 2021 task orders, and that there are two of those, West Yost Associates and Environmental Science Associates. This is fairly routine, I presume, so let's have a quick report and then we can move on.
Yes. Yeah, so 2 tasks, we're up to task order 13 with West Coast Associates, and this is really, they serve as the agency's engineers, so they do help us with various, I think there's 18 or something discrete tasks within our budget. And then also help us with various projects to the joint intake and other things that we may have going on. So it's really just a continuation of their work. Task order number 10 with ESA Associates. They help us out with various environmental permitting issues, EIR addendum for water purchase agreement with West Sacramento that we're starting to work on, and construction support and permitting at the joint intake facility.
Thank you. Any questions of the general manager on either of these supplemental contracts? Presuming no public comment either.
Correct.
Then we can proceed to a motion, please.
Motion by Landsberg.
Second by Lee.
Motion by Landsberg, second by Lee to approve item 4, the amendment to existing service provider contracts. No further discussion. All in favor, oh, excuse me, Linan, call the roll.
Okay, Chair Stallard,
Aye.
all right. Vice Chair Arnold,
Aye.
all right. Director Lee,
Aye.
okay. Director Landsberg,
Aye.
good. Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you, Linan. And now item 5 is to consider the approval of a board secretary services agreement with Ponticello Enterprises Consulting Engineers and related termination of Deemer Engineering Services Agreement. And this is where we have to figure out how life can go on without Linan. So Tim, do you want to present this?
Yes, yeah. So this is really the first time for our agency. Linan has been our board secretary since the beginning of agency, more than 10 years ago. So really, Linan has done a tremendous job through planning of the whole project, through design, construction, and operations phase, and has really done an excellent job keeping both Stan and myself out of trouble and making sure we paid everything on time, making sure our permits are always still valid. But Lynn has decided to retire in August of this year. So we will definitely miss Lynn as the board secretary position. What we've been working on the last several months, this isn't a surprise thing, it's something that's been in the works for some time. Stan, Lynn, and myself did go out to search for a new board secretary. A couple of the key things that we really were looking for is a longer term commitment. We don't want to do this every year. We wanted somebody who will make agency work their priority and basically continue the things in the manner that Lynn has done a very good job at doing. So we looked at 3 different people. We interviewed 2 and decided that we were comfortable moving forward with Michelle Mitchell from Ponticello Enterprises. As you know, the agency has no direct employees, and the agency did not want to start having employees. So it's really important to us to basically contract this service out. Ponticello Enterprises is a Woodland-based company. Michelle does live in Woodland, so it's easy for her to get to the plant to do something on a relatively short notice. And then we would at the same time, after a training period, we would end the agreement we have with Deemer Engineering. Lynn is actually paid through Deemer Engineering still. Dennis had agreed to continue that through Lynn's tenure, but isn't really interested in processing payroll forever. So he had said that after Lynn retires, he's done. So that's where we're at. So the plan is really, we will start training Michelle through the month of August and into September as needed. And then Lynn will slowly phase out right around the end of August.
Thank you, Tim. We can't say enough nice about Lynn. She's just been a stalwart, and you're probably almost our longest term in person at this point, I think. Others have come and gone. Even Tim came later than you. I don't know about Dick Shanahan. Were you there, Dick, at the very beginning?
Yes, I was. I've been longer than Lenan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, don't go anywhere.
All right.
Thank you. Now, I believe, isn't Michelle Mitchell on the call?
Yes.
Why don't we have Michelle introduce herself, okay? Michelle, do you want to turn your mic on and introduce yourself to our panel?
Certainly. Hi, I'm Michelle Mitchell. Thanks for the opportunity to serve the water board, the water agency. It's going to be fun, interesting, and something new for me.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. You have big shoes to follow.
Yes, I do.
Unless Lynn would rather have them be regarded as petite shoes. I don't really know. They're
There's
important
no
shoes.
pressure there, though. No pressure. Yeah.
Thankfully, she says she's going to train me well.
Right.
That's great. I know you wouldn't leave us high and dry, Lynn. Any member of the board wish to address questions on this issue to anyone? And I presume no public comment on this.
Correct. No public comment.
All right, let us proceed to a motion on the recommendations in item 5.
Chair Stallard, I have a comment though.
Please comment.
I want to
Dr.
thank Lynn for the help she's given me as a new board member. I congratulate her on her retirement, and the best to you, Lynn. Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
Now I'll do the motion on this.
And Lee will second, and also thank Lynn for all her help over the years. It's definitely been appreciated.
Thank you.
And Mr. Stallard.
Yes, sir.
This is Don Saylor. So actually, I'm the longest serving board member of this organization, having been a founding member back in the beginning of time. And Lynn has been, and I think preceded her role here as a City of Davis employee. And I'm just so happy for her to have reached this milestone in her life. And I wish her all the best. And thank you for all the service you've given to all of our agency here and to the people of Davis and Woodland in many different capacities. Thank you for everything, Lynn.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
You're definitely going out on a high note. I mean, it was a roller coaster in the beginning, but now it's doing very nicely, thanks to everyone's efforts. All right, so I think the motion was by Landsberg, and was the second by Lee?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. further discussion before we proceed to a roll call vote? Leanne, please proceed with the roll call.
Okay. Chair Stallard.
Aye.
All right. Vice Chair Arnold.
Aye.
Good. Director Lee.
Aye.
All right. Director Landsberg.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you, everyone. And Michelle will welcome you into the family. Moving on to item 6, the consideration of bidding and award of construction contract for the Joint Intake Erosion Control Improvement Project, or to elect to contract the work through RD 2035. I presume there's a recommendation.
Not quite a direct one yet. So this is the project that we're looking to do the erosion control repairs at the joint intake on the south side, directly on the Sacramento River. And we're working at 2 options. Really, part of it relates to the fact that we're still finalizing the permitting for this work. Mm-hmm. Some of the agencies have requested some things that we've not quite agreed with. So we're working through that right now. And we're also working with RD 2035 to see if, because they are the joint, they're the other half of the joint, well, they're really 80% of the joint ownership of this intake. We could contract either through agency or through RD 2035 to get the work completed. And it kind of depends on who has better access to what contractor at the time. And actually RD 2035 can do the work less expensively than we can. So we're working with them on that, and it looks, we're probably leaning towards RD 2035 actually doing the work, but that does depend a little bit on what are the final permit conditions that we have to follow. So what's before you today is consideration to allow the agency staff to do either to bid the work directly with a contractor, or to have RD 2035 do the work and simply pay them our 20%.
So this is a grant of authority to you as manager to basically to select which way we go.
Yes.
Correct.
All right.
Go ahead, sir.
Who would like to speak?
This is Stan. I just wanted to say I noticed that I did not put the appropriate recommendation for item 6 up on the board. It's the recommendation, as in the staff report, is move to authorize the general manager to bid, award, and sign a construction contract for the joint intake erosion control improvement project, or elect to contract work through RD 2035 and its staff or contractor. So essentially what is on the screen now is item 6 is what we're requesting authorization.
I think we get that. Any member of the panel have a question or comment on this item? There being none, no public comment being presumed.
Correct.
All right, we're ready for a motion to give the general manager the authority to let a contract for this project to either of the 2 options.
I'll make the motion. This is Lee.
Thank you, Director Lee.
Landsberg will second.
Thank you. Motion by Director Lee, second by Director Landsberg, to approve the item 6 grant of authority to the general manager to bid and select a contractor for the work required. For no further discussion, call the roll, please, Leanne.
Okay. Chair Stallard.
Aye.
All right. Vice Chair Arnold.
Aye.
All right. Director Lee.
Aye.
Okay. Director Landsberg.
Aye.
Good. Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. We'll move along then to item 7, the update on supplemental water supply study and options. And is that you, Tim, again?
I'll turn this over to Polly and others.
Introduce Polly, please.
Yeah, so this is the study that we've been working on for about a year now, a little bit less than a year, on water supply risk and evaluation study. So we looked at, the last time this study was done was about a decade ago, back in 2009. And what was forecasted at that time is that the city, the project partners' demands were, higher than they are now, and then were projected to increase to something like 5% per year. And then the other part of it at that time was that Term 91 extending past October 31 was viewed as a very remote thing, something we don't even need to really contemplate. So our 10-year-old water supply study says 2 things that are not true today. One, that our demands today are something like 30% lower than they were in 2010, 2012 timeframe. And they seem to be persistently at that level now. we're about 4 years into these same demand rates. And we've also learned in the last 6 years that term 91 can happen after October 31. It has happened 4 times in the last 6 years. And the effect of that in the agency is that we have, if term 91 is still in effect after October 31, we cannot access our primary water right, but our senior water right also ends October 31. So the impact on the agency is that we have no ability to deliver water when that happens. So what was a remote possibility 10 years ago now seems to happen a lot more frequently for several various reasons. So we decided to undertake a study to look at, okay, what are the impacts to the agency and how do we minimize risks? On the positive side, our demands are lower, but on the risk side, there are some new risks that were not contemplated earlier. So West Yost and MBK and ESA came together to help work on this for us, and this is the presentation on where we are.
Okay, but please introduce Polly for the benefit of the panel.
Sorry, yeah.
Right.
Polly Busafin works at West Yost Engineers. So she's been the studies project manager, working with everybody on it. Thanks, Tim. Polly?
Thank you. Happy to be here today. And I think as Tim has outlined, this study is an important one because it offers an opportunity to firm up the agency's supply. I think Tim's pretty well covered the items on slide 1. Your water rights permit is subject to curtailment under term 91. The term 91, as I'm sure you're all aware, limits the diversions when storage releases are required from the state and federal water projects. And so when term 91 is in effect, you're unable to divert water under your 45,000 acre foot per year water right. Next slide, please. So this gets to also some of what Tim was talking about. Here, this graph on the right shows the frequency of curtailments from 2000 to 2019. And you can see that most of the curtailments occur in the summer, which is shown, the April through November period, which is shown in the white space in the center, with percentage of curtailments very high in August, lower in other months. And then the yellow shows the winter months when you don't have a supplemental supply. And although the numbers are lower, you can see in November and December, the curtailments have been relatively frequent, and then also extending into January and February. So again, term 91 mainly curtails in the summer months, but in recent years, as Tim mentioned, we've been seeing curtailments in the winter time as well. And so in the summer, you have the supplemental supply that you can use. It's reduced some in a Shasta critical year, but you still have supply available, whereas in the winter months, you have no supplemental supply. Next slide. So our study scope involved these 6 items: background data collection and review, summarizing the study demands, identifying the future supply needs, developing and screening alternatives, evaluating water supply portfolios. And here, what we mean by portfolios is that an alternative in its own right might not be enough to solve the need. And so if we find that that's the case, we might look at combining different alternatives. And then we'll be documenting this in a report. Next slide. So we've completed the first 3 items. We're working right now on item 4. And I'm primarily going to report out on what we've discovered for items 2, 3, and 4 today. So for the study, we're using a 20-year time frame looking through 2040. And this graphic below shows the average annual demand. On the top, you see the numbers in acre feet per year. And then the stack bars show the individual contributions for Woodland-Davis and UC-Davis. And those are shown in MGD and average daily demand. So simply the annual requirement divided by 365 days per year. And the thing, let's see, that we want to note here is that the demands don't include the water for ASR injection. So these are just the pure demands. And as Tim mentioned, these numbers are quite a bit lower than the previous study that you did. So that's the good news. And, you know, we've seen that pretty consistently around the state, that originally 2007 was the benchmark, and then 2013 became the benchmark. And even since then, with the drought, we've seen a lot of reduction in demand and not as much recovery as we thought we might. Next slide. So in doing a supply and demand analysis, we use a historical hydrologic record that covers the period from 1922 to 2003. And we compare available surface water supplies and demands on a monthly basis for this period. And then we're calculating what we're calling a surface water shortfall for each simulation month and year. And the shortfall is the portion of overall demand not met with surface water. It doesn't account for the other supplies that you have that are available. And then that's used as the basis for assessing the need for other supply options. So this has two graphs here. On the top, we're showing for the demand conditions of 2020, 2030, and 2040, the average annual shortfall. So this is just the average over that period from 1922 to 2003. And then the worst case annual shortfall is shown on the right-hand side. So there's quite a bit of variability. And so when we developed surface water acquisition targets, we looked at kind of the frequency and the amounts. And so on the top half of the bottom table, we show for the November to December timeframe, the acquisition target is about 2,000 to 3,000 acre feet per year, or acre feet. And that's needed about 25 to 30% of the time.
Oh, sorry,
I'm sorry, is there a question?
No, sorry, I got interrupted.
Oh, okay. November through March, there have been curtailments that have extended into the winter months, and so we have an acquisition target of 2,000 to 6,000 acre feet in that time frame. But you can see that the frequency is much, much lower. That only occurs approximately 1% to 5% of the time. We also have a summertime need for April through October. The acquisition targets are 700 to 2,400 acre feet per year, about a third of the time. And then for those more extreme events, 5,000 to 9,000 acre feet for the 1 to 5% range. But the big thing to point out here is that really the November through March timeframe is what we're targeting as critical, because that's where you don't have a supplemental surface water supply right now. So we're considering a number of different alternatives. I'm going to discuss each of these options in a little bit more detail. And then we'll be evaluating each of these to determine the best supplemental supply option. So on the supplemental surface water supply options, we're looking at a number of different types of options. Annual purchases, which is similar to what you've been doing with West Sac in prior years. That's generally a shorter time frame for negotiation. The availability is uncertain from year to year. Fish and Wildlife also have some concerns about recurring transfers. So this really isn't a good long-term option. It's been a good backstop for you in recent years, but we want to try to find something that's a longer-term proposition. So we're also looking at long-term transfers, and this would be, by long-term, we're talking anywhere from 5 to 20 years. And obviously the feasibility of this depends on the seller's supply and demand and the local politics. Some Central Valley Project and State Water Project contractors may have surplus supplies. We're expecting that Delta export agencies may object, and then the environmental requirements are a little bit more than they would be for annual purchases. And then, of course, there's no guarantee for supply after the contract term ends. We're also looking at the possibility of a state water project contract. This would require state water board approval. And we think that the politics may be complicated for this type of an arrangement. And the success and timeline are uncertain at this point in time. We're uncertain whether this has ever been requested before. That's one of the things we need to explore. And then the environmental process, again, would be a little bit more than the previous options we've discussed. And then lastly, we're looking at permanent purchase, where the agency would retain ownership of a right and or contract. But as you might imagine, in California's water short environment, there's minimal availability of these types of contracts and they're pretty high cost. So the status of the surface water options is we're reaching out to those with potential water supplies, and Brian Becerra and Darren Cordova, who are on the call today as well, are leading that effort. We'll engage the board when we get closer to a decision point on that. We're also looking at agency ASR wells, and so this would be development of an ASR well field at or near the regional water treatment facility. And the well field would serve UC Davis and Davis because Woodland already has a local ASR program adequate for their needs. And we're finding already with the work that we've done that the program would be most effective in conjunction with a modest expansion of the regional water treatment facility. I'll talk about that a bit more in a moment. And then just a note that the City of Davis and UC Davis are also separately considering their own local ASR programs. For the agency ASR wells, we've evaluated subsurface conditions in the vicinity of the water treatment facility. What we found thus far is that the groundwater conditions, the ASR zone appears to be similar to Woodland, but we anticipate that it has less storage potential than in Woodland. We've also evaluated the groundwater gradients, which are similar to Woodland, but there's a lot of ag pumping in the area, and that's a concern as well. So for this option, we believe that future studies will be needed to reduce the uncertainty. Now, on the regional water treatment facility expansion, this option really helps out if we're evaluating an agency ASR program or a supplemental water supply acquisition during the April through October period. When your demands are higher, you could treat that additional water and serve it. We picked 4 MGD because this could be accomplished relatively inexpensively. If you were to increase the filter rate at the plant and modify the pump station, you could deliver an additional 4 MGD. And that would significantly improve the effectiveness of either of these options for Davis and UC Davis. And Woodland is not expected to need any additional capacity before 2040. So again, the focus is for Davis and UC Davis for this option. Next slide. We're also evaluating potable reuse, and we're looking at the feasibility and cost of treating Woodland Water Pollution Control Facility effluent to drinking water standards. We expect that this option has very high capital costs and operational costs. Public acceptance can also be an issue for this. So at this point in time, the option is not likely attractive in comparison to the other alternatives. And that's primarily because the currently approved treatment technologies are quite expensive and quite energy intensive. We anticipate that as things go forward, that there's more likely to be changes in the regulations that will make this a cheaper alternative. So this could potentially be a long-term option, but in the short term, it's not likely to be cost competitive. So our next steps is that we'll continue meeting with the water suppliers to discuss surface water supply, lease and or purchase, and we'll return to you as the opportunities progress and we need direction and input. We'll then be screening the potential alternatives, looking at supply quantity and timing, the regulatory permitting and legal issues, any environmental fatal flaws, and developing costs to the best of our ability, and then as needed, developing water supply portfolios that may include a number of different or one or more alternatives, and then we'll be documenting that in the final report. And I think that is it. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Polly. Questions or comments of anyone directed to Polly? And I presume no public comment?
Correct. No public comments.
All right. Well, this isn't an action item. This is a report. So I think that would include the issue for today. Is that correct? Mr. Bush?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Polly. We'll look forward to
Thank
hearing
you.
in the future. Let's move to item 8. Well, it's time to throw the chair out. You know what I mean? So
It seems like he became the chair.
And Woodland's going to toss the football to Davis. So I think it's Will. I think it's your turn, isn't it?
I think so.
Well,
Landsberg will nominate Will Arnold, who's been hiding in the
seconds.
bushes all night.
And I think let's get our vice chair nominated also, so we can have a single roll call for both of them. I'm happy to nominate Rich Landsberg for vice chair.
I'll second that. This is Lee.
All right. And I think Lynn Ann got all that down. Any further nominations? There being none, nominations are closed. Lynn Ann, call the roll, please.
Okay. Chair Stallard.
Aye.
All right. Vice Chair Arnold.
Aye.
Good. Director Lee.
Aye.
All right. Director Landsberg.
Aye.
All right. The vote passes 4-0.
Very good. That's nice. Well, I'll finish up today, and the next meeting is yours, Will, and I wish you well. All right. Long range board calendar. What's coming up?
The next board meeting is September the third Thursday in September. What date is that? September 19th or something? 18th?
September 17th.
17th. Okay, sorry. So yes, the only thing coming up on long range calendar is the next board meeting on September 17th, scheduled for Davis, but we'll see where we are at that time. If it's an online meeting again, or if we are back to in-person meetings.
Yeah, and the only thing to add to that meeting so far, beyond the normal GM and Ops update and the quarterly treasurer's report, would be the request earlier this meeting regarding the solar discussion.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that. That takes us to item 10, which is board member comments. Any of my colleagues have a comment to make today?
This is Will. I'll say thank you, Tom, for your chairmanship, and thank you, Lynn Ann, for your long service to the organization. We appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Here. Thanks, Will. I have a comment. A pool person told me that there have been problems with servicing swimming pools in both Davis and Woodland due to phosphate intrusion. And Tim has answered the question to my satisfaction. I didn't realize we actually add phosphates to the water at the treatment plant, but this can present clouding and sediment developing in swimming pools. And apparently the problem is frequent in Davis and somewhat frequent in Woodland. So I just want you to know, according to Tim, and Stan can weigh in, we're putting in as little phosphate as we can to protect our pipes. And if that's the case, then that's the case. But I would hope that they would do everything they can to keep a minimal amount of phosphates addition, not only to avoid cost, but also to avoid the consequences for pool owners in our communities. Tim, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. When we started, this is something that back from the design of the water treatment plant and how to convert the cities from groundwater to surface water, we hired Trussell Technologies to help us out with that, because there have been some really bad failures from communities that have done that. And the treatment technology that is generally used in the country is the addition of orthophosphates. That is one of the things that they stopped doing in Flint, Michigan before they had their problems there. So when the water plant started, we were injecting at a rate of 3 milligrams per liter to both Woodland and Davis, mainly to try to help get our pipes to become accommodated to the different waters. A very different water chemistry between groundwater and surface water. And we both, the project partners, have old cast iron pipes who really did not like that change. So we had been adding it at 3 milligrams per liter. We did that for about a year, stepped down to 2.5, stepped down again to 2.0. And we've been at 2.0 milligrams per liter for about a year right now. According to the studies that we've looked at, we could possibly step down to about 1.5, but we cannot go lower than that. Anything lower than that we would then risk destabilizing. There's kind of a phosphate iron film, if you would, inside these older cast iron pipes. And if we drop the phosphates too low, we would destabilize that kind of barrier and then potentially have rather severe water quality problems again in our distribution systems. So I'm going to talk with Jeremy, Woodlands Water Operator, to see if he's comfortable with going down to 1.5. But so we could probably make that change since we have been okay at 2, but probably not lower than 1.5.
Thank you, Tim. And the inquiry was not intended to cause us to do anything less than what's most, essential to the survival of our pipes. We have a lot of money invested in that equipment.
Yes, definitely understood, and it's something we have been monitoring. The chemical itself is not that expensive, so it's not really a cost driver to reduce it. But we don't want to add more chemicals than what we need. But we also, at the same time, want to be very cautious that we don't want to do what happened in Flint. We don't want to drop it too far and then have a problem.
All right. We don't want anything to happen like what happened in Flint.
Exactly.
Any other comments today from anyone present? If not, thank you again, Lenan. We're adjourned till September 17th when we have a really good chair running this group. Everybody have a good day. See you then. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.